Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Arcot, and I'm a business development executive at AQL Technologies. Thank you for taking out the time for the webinar. Today's agenda would be introduction to AQL Technologies, which will not take more than a couple minutes. After that, we have Samir Mohammed presenting on Power Apps, and finally, a question and answer session. So let's get started. For those of you who are not familiar with AQL Technologies, we are a Microsoft certified gold partner with 30 plus Microsoft certified senior level resources. We've been in the market since the past 10 plus years and have successfully delivered. Just give me a second. Let me try to show the screen here. I'm not sure if my screen is visible. Just a moment. Okay. All right. I hope my screen is visible to everybody now. Sorry about that. Okay, so so we've been in the business for the past 10 plus years and have successfully delivered hundreds plus SharePoint projects that includes both implementations and migrations for public as well as private sector clients. And along with SharePoint, a few other technologies we've been working with are Office 365, .NET, Power BI, Microsoft Dynamics, SQL Server, Tableau, and so on. AQL is also partner with various SharePoint third-party solutions like Nintex, Metalogics, ShareGate, K2, and AvePoint. Coming to our SharePoint migration services, we have done a lot of migration from SharePoint on-prem or to SharePoint Online. And currently, we are running a SharePoint promotion for new clients, a free 4-hour pre-migration assessment, or a free 4-hour SharePoint farm health checkup. So give me a call or send me an email to get more information, and I would be more than glad to reply back. Now, without taking much of your time, I'll make Samir the presenter, and let's get started.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you're able to see my screen. And it should be, so what you should be seeing on the screen right now is Power Apps. What can I really do with it? So thank you so much for coming to this webinar. And just as Sam said, let's get started without wasting any time. So my name is Samir Mohammed, and I'm the SharePoint principal at AQL Technologies. 20 years of IT experience, and I've been implementing SharePoint since the year 2003. Certified in several versions of SharePoint, and here's some of my info. Here's my email, sm@aqltech.com. My blog is meetsamir.com. And here's my LinkedIn profile. Send me a LinkedIn invite, please. And here's my Twitter handle. By the way, also, I'm going to go ahead and send this presentation to you after we are done. So don't bother making any notes. I'll just send it over to you. Or if I'm sharing that, I usually send it, but if I'm sharing that on a slideshow, I'll send you the link as well. So today we're going to go ahead and talk about Power Apps. What can I really do with it? And here's a big picture of the business platform. So this is the Microsoft's business platform where you can actually see the offerings which are common to Dynamics 365 and Office 365. And under the business platform, we have Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, and Power BI. So the idea is that all these three offerings for Microsoft, which is Power BI, Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow, altogether is the extensibility solution for building composite applications on top of Office 365. Usually Microsoft refers this to as a no-code solution, which is, and I would actually say that it's less code solution. At times, writing a little bit of code, but I would really term this as a no-code solution, as a less code solution. Sorry about that. So with these three services, I can actually connect to several different connectors, several different services out there, and data already, and bring the data from different services which is already in your organization, and then use these tools to integrate the data and create a data mashup from the data from all these different services and create a single application. Maybe Power Apps, maybe Microsoft Flow, maybe Power BI. So Power BI, I'm not going to be covering in this session. I might, if I get some time, I'll try touching base on Microsoft Flow, but primarily this session is going to be focused on Power Apps and Power Apps using SharePoint. So let's get started with Power Apps. Primarily when Power Apps was released, it was released as a tool for creating apps for your phone. Office 365 apps for your phone with no code or less code solutions. So either for your mobile device, which might be a phone or your tablet as well. So, and at that time, there was a lot of talk about, hey, is this tool, is Power Apps really going to be replacing InfoPath or not? And at that time, I've been actually following Power Apps since it started. So I never thought that Power Apps would actually replace InfoPath form, even though Microsoft kept saying that. But since when it started, it was always for creating apps on your mobile device, on your phone and tablets, and there was no integration with SharePoint form customizations. But then recently, which is like a month back, Microsoft has released this general announcement where InfoPath, where you can actually use Power Apps to really replace InfoPath, and you can actually go ahead and create applications even with SharePoint forms and then customize the SharePoint form. So now you have a lot more than what InfoPath even offered. So let's go ahead and take a look at things that we can actually do using Power Apps. So what really are Power Apps? Standalone applications targeted at mobile platform, phones and tablets, and solid integration with SharePoint and several other Office 365 offerings. And this is now a replacement for InfoPath forms. Power Apps web portal. This is how a Power Apps web portal looks like. And let me go ahead and open up Power Apps web portal as well. So this is where you can actually see a list of all of your apps which are shared within your organization. So these apps can actually be created by as many developers as you want. And this is where you can actually go ahead and share these apps, share these Power Apps, which has been created with your entire organization. And I'm going to go ahead and show you an example on the web. So this is AQL Technologies. And when you log in, this is where you're going to see a test app over here. I was just messing around with this app over here, but you're going to see a lot of different apps over here. And all these apps can actually be shared by, and you can actually give several different kind of permissions to users depending on, who wants to do what. Give out permissions, export them, edit on the web settings, just run them. So this is kind of like where you can see a list of all the apps which actually reside within your organization. Building Power Apps. So how do you usually build Power Apps? So Microsoft has provided the Power App Studio, and this is kind of like a high-level overview of how it's gonna look like. Once we take a look into this, we're gonna go ahead and dive into the Power App, open up the Power App Studio, and take a look into it and see how we can actually go ahead and create some serious code with that. By the way, the whole agenda of this session is to show a few things, or try displaying the strength of Power Apps. So I'm not going to be digging deep into the code, but I definitely have a YouTube video where I have created a Power App, the sample Power App that I'm going to be demonstrating over here. So you can actually go ahead and experience the whole building of the Power App within that YouTube video. So back to the Power Studio over here. This is how the Power Studio looks like, and you can actually use it to craft forms and screens in a visual designer that helps you see exactly what you will get. Take advantages of device capabilities like cameras, GPS, and pen controls. Build business logic into your app with an Excel-inspired expression language. You're going to see that a lot of this, when I was saying that it's not really a no-code solution, but a less-code solution, you're going to see that these Power Apps are primarily for you can actually use the power behind these Power Apps. So there are a lot of things that you could do, but you're going to end up using a lot of this Excel-style formulas. So the strength, I believe, of a Power developer, of a Power App developer, is to actually know and understand these Excel-style formulas. Microsoft has provided a lot of documentation on that. We're going to go back and take a look at, visit that as well. And finally, extend the capabilities of the connected data sources or focus just on the bits you need. So which pretty much means that, in lines with what I was saying, you can actually, so Office 365 has a lot of different SKUs. So a lot of the data is actually sitting in a lot of different services. And let's just say if you have a different service, which is out there, not part of Microsoft, you can still, there might still be a connector. And you can actually use these connectors, and these services could be anything. It could be just Salesforce, or it could be Microsoft Dynamics CRM is already there. Salesforce is also there. But it could be SAP, it could be Wunderlist, it could be Google Calendar, it could be Google Drive, or anything which is out there. So Microsoft has actually created quite a few connectors. You can actually use these connectors to retrieve the data from those services, from any of these services that I just mentioned, and bring the data into Power Apps and then do CRUD operations in it, which is create, read, update, and delete operations in it. This is how a Power Studio looks like, and we're going to go ahead and look into this and start messing with it pretty soon. But this is how the Power App Studio looks like. On the left-hand side, you're going to see a lot of different screens over here. On the right-hand side, you're going to go ahead and see the data sources. Again, what I have, my apps are focused on SharePoint. So this could be anything. This could be focused on Google Drive, on SAP, on a REST API, or anything whatsoever. Up in the top is where users can actually write down these Excel-inspired formulas. And they could be multiple screens. And the good part is that the Power Apps Studio can be downloaded on your machine. It's also part of the SharePoint Windows Store, or you can just go ahead and access that over the web. We're going to try doing both of that. So the entire, so instead of downloading the Power App Studio, you could just go ahead and use the browser to go ahead and modify that. So the Power App Studio is all built within the browser itself, and you don't need to download that. Publish to a range of devices. So these are the devices when it comes down to the mobile apps that you can deploy them to: iOS version 9.1 and above, Android 5 and above, and Windows 10 mobile. In general, how does the Power Apps work? So let's just talk about, how does it really work? Power App Cloud. So publish apps to people in your organization so they can access anywhere. So this is what I've just shown you. You can actually see a list of all the Power Apps on the Power Apps portal within your organization, and the admin can go ahead and give any users permissions. Connections. These are the several different services we've been talking about. Build apps that interact with your data sources and respect their permissions. Use on web and mobile. Find and use apps instantly on the web and in Power App Mobile for iOS and Android. Create in Power App Studio. Build apps in a visual experience that shows exactly what you will get. And finally, your data Power App contents Power App connects to a range of data sources and systems, including custom APIs. And this is what I was talking about. That it could be Salesforce, it could be Dynamic CRM, it could be just plain Google Drive, or it could be an Excel file as well. Also, you can share with anyone on your Active Directory tenant, need own credentials. The only limitation is that you're going to need credentials. Power Apps is available only for Office 365. So which means that anybody who's trying to use Power Apps, they need to have their own SharePoint Online credentials, which is part of the Office 365 suite. Connect with SQL Server. You can also have Power Apps connect with SQL Server as long as you're able to access the data. So there's this whole concept of gateways. So which means that even if SQL Server is sitting within your environment on-prem, you can still create Power Apps or Power Flows connecting to SQL Server behind the scenes, but you will have to go ahead and install and configure these connectors, which actually expose the data on-prem to the Power Apps, which is actually sitting in the cloud. You can also connect it with Dropbox and Box Access or Google Drive, connect with Office 365 groups, and we're going to see how we can do this pretty soon. Create role-based apps. Yes, you can actually create. So this feature was not there for quite some time, but you can also go ahead and create role-based apps, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at how I can customize a SharePoint form. How I can customize a SharePoint list form with Power Apps and make it role-based, which means that, hey, if I'm a manager, I should be able to do something that a regular user might not be able to do. And then finally, explicit content every time can be specified. Explicit consent every time can be specified, which is pretty much permissions on Power Apps using these several different services. This is how Power Apps looks like in SharePoint now, and this has been over the past year that Microsoft has kept adding options to this Power App menu over here within SharePoint. So this is a SharePoint list basically, and before Power Apps and Flow was not even here, but over the last few months, and especially over the last month, Microsoft now has the customized forms. And I was just saying that before November, you could just go ahead and create mobile apps which run on the cell phone. Apps which run on the cell phones as well as the tablets by clicking on this option, create an app. But now, as of the general release in November, everybody should be, and this has been deployed to all Office 365 accounts. So everybody should be able to now go ahead and customize their SharePoint list forms using the custom form option, and we're going to go ahead and look into that pretty soon now. These are some of those connectors that I've been talking about: Common Data Service, SharePoint, Dynamics 365, OneDrive for Business, Salesforce, and several different connectors. So in brief, Power Apps or Microsoft Flow or Power BI is just not limited to one single service like SharePoint, but now you can go ahead and expose them and use the data sources from any of these different services and a lot more to go ahead and create your applications. Or you could just go ahead and create a blank application, which might be a phone layout or a tablet layout as well. Let's go ahead and do a demo of the Power Apps Web Portal Studio. So if I were to create a brand new app, then hey, this is how it's going to look like. So I can actually start with data coming from these services, or start a blank template, or start from the app templates over here. So this is the most interesting thing. I can actually go ahead and click a phone layout or a tablet layout, and it's going to go ahead and show me a list of all those app templates that I can start with. And by default, Microsoft has provided these several different templates, and these are pretty good. You can actually go ahead and look into this, click on these, and you can go ahead and look into the code behind these as well. And there's a lot of learning that you can actually do from the code that you can actually see in here. Again, the code that I am saying is not really C# or JavaScript code, but these are Excel-inspired formulas, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at it. So in brief, I'm gonna go ahead and go back actually, and click on new, and I'm just gonna go ahead and click on the phone layout, and let's just go ahead and take a look at how a blank app from phone layout looks like. So this is what I get, and up in the top, so on the left-hand side, I basically get a list of all the screens. There could be multiple screens. For any of you who's actually coming from the InfoPath background, just like how we used to have views before, now there are screens over here. And these screens can actually connect to several different data sources. Up in the top, I actually have this place where I can write down formulas. I can write down formulas connecting with several different events and properties. On start, on visible. So this is where I can actually write down formulas. And on the right-hand side, I have this property screen. And the property screen it's pretty it's pretty common the way the property screen has evolved over here from other tools like Visual Studio, or I can't remember InfoPath. It's just not coming to me because I haven't used that in a little time, but it's pretty intuitive. And then there's this whole concept of rules, which came out in the last couple of months as well. So which pretty much means that now you can program that intelligence within the PowerApps form like it used to be done back in the InfoPath days as well. And then finally, there are a few advanced settings over here. There's a whole big option up in the top where you can actually go ahead and insert new screens. Just clicking on this is going to go ahead and create brand new screens, a form screen or a list screen or scroll-in screen. I mean, there are a lot of different screens that you can actually create over here. And these are the controls that I can drag and drop over here. So, and this is a gallery control. You're going to see that a gallery control is very similar to repeating lines in InfoPath. And it does a pretty good job. So I can just go ahead and keep adding, and these are all created as SharePoint list items. Good part is that they're not really saved as XML content like it used to happen back in the InfoPath days, but these are really saved as SharePoint list items. And up in the top, so this is like when I click on the gallery over here, it takes me to the default property over which is the items. And the items is actually the data source. So what is really the data source of the gallery? Where's the data coming from? And this is kind of like an Excel inspired formula, which actually is creating a sample data source and actually shows the list items. I'm going to go back and then open up a sample app that Microsoft has provided. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit. Don't save the existing one, and let's go ahead and open this up. It asks me for permission. Say, I'm signing in, or what do you want to do? Sign in. This app, the budget tracker app, basically connects to Google Drive. It actually creates. Okay. Hopefully, I remember my password here. Okay. Okay. Give me a real quick second over here. almost there. It's just going to take me another second. So this is where the permissions are. What's basically happening over here is the information is all the information from the budget tracker application is actually being stored in my Google Drive. And I want to go ahead and show you if I can, for some reason, remember the username and password here. Then I think I have some screenshots and I can definitely show you how the whole thing works. Okay. So allow permissions. So pretty much this budget tracker application that I'm showing to you right now, this is a Microsoft app which actually connects to Google Drive. I always used to get this request, hey, I mean, this is a SharePoint session. Why don't we go ahead and look at apps which are actually connecting to SharePoint list? So right after this, I'm going to go back and show that as well. So so this is a visual, this is a PowerApps Studio, and to start with, I'm just going to go ahead and run this. Create a budget to start with. Let's go ahead and create a budget, click on plus. Snow cleaning. We have had some pretty bad snow over here. And I think that this time it's going to be, might be kind of like an estimate of $5,000. You don't save. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and, so pretty much what's happening is that I think that since I'm using a different account to save the information, it's just not being saved properly. It's just expecting certain files. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and show you how those apps, how those files actually look like. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at it. So this is how it's a good thing that just because of problems like these, I always make sure that that I have a snapshot of how those files are basically stored. So this is Google Drive. So again, this app, the budget tracker app, and you can go ahead and download that from the Microsoft site. It probably might require a little bit of setup, but right after that, it actually creates these files right within the Google My Drive, and this is how these records look like. It actually creates this unique IDs for, I believe, every single record that it actually creates. And when you go in any of those folders, the data is actually stored within Excel files. Okay, so and when I open up that Excel file, this is how it looks like. So pretty much, and I think that it's a pretty strong point that PowerApps is able to connect to these Excel files, which are just, which is just sitting on something like Google Drive or any drives out there, and just able to pull the data and then present it in a very structured manner, along with validations, along with rules and everything. I'm going to go ahead and now open up another app, which is going to be a basic purchase order app. And this actually has got a lot more code than the Microsoft app. And also this connects with SharePoint list rather than Google Drive. I wouldn't have time to go ahead and demonstrate creating this entire app. So I have this video that you can actually watch where I've created this whole purchase order app from start to end. Give me a second here, just opening up the app, and it should be on its way. Okay, so let's just go ahead and run this. It opens up, the app actually opens up in PowerApps Studio, of course, and this is in the developer mode, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. So this is in the user mode. And again, this is actually, I haven't started demonstrating how we can customize SharePoint list forms using PowerApps yet, which I'm going to go ahead and do that pretty soon. But this is actually creating, Power App, which runs on the mobile device. And this is actually making use of the phone layout. So pretty much what I have is very basic things over here, which is kind of like in lines with the budget tracker application that we just saw. This is expense by category. And I have these three categories over here: food, furniture, and electronics. And a graph over here, which actually shows me that, hey, you know what, electronics is of course the biggest expense so far. And then I think I have furniture over here, and I think I have food over here, which is pretty small. So I'm gonna go ahead and bump up the food price a little bit with a very special kind of, with a very special kind of burger that I have actually found online. It's known as the Glad famous Honky Tonky Burger. In pretty much every single session that I've talked about the Glad famous Honky Tony Burger, nobody's actually tried that, and I'm hoping to bump into someone who's actually tried this burger. This is actually sold in England. And I'm going to go ahead and select the category for that. Might be throw it in snacks. And then the quantity is going to be 5 burgers only. The reason being that this burger actually cost $1,768. Kind of like a little hefty price for one single burger. But I've been actually told that it comes with a gold leaf on the top of it as well, other than, you know, all fancy different kind of meats. I'm going to skip the barcode. It's going to be a one-time buy. Hit on save, and there I have the Glad famous Honky Tony Burger. Click on that, and it actually shows me some of those details right here. Go back to my main page over here, and now I can actually see that the food category is bumped up a little bit, and I can actually see that the sum of the entire food category so far is actually $9,140. So this is a pretty simple app, but let's go back and dissect this code a little bit and then see what's happening behind the scenes here. Click on next, go back to the developer mode, and I'm not going to jump into a lot of code, but I'll just give you an overview of what it takes to build an app like this. On the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and start with a list of all the screens that I have. I have a dashboard screen, and then I have a browse screen one, and then I have detail screen one, and then I have edit screen one. So these are 4 different screens that I have, and click on these screens, and it actually shows me what these screens are, and I can actually give them proper names as well instead of the one suffix which is up in the end, but that's okay for now. So now let's take a look at how I'm actually calculating, and you know, this pie chart over here. Click on the pie chart, and it actually takes a data source. I need to define a data source, and I have actually done that using this line of code over here, which is basically just getting which is pretty much just getting from the purchase order list that I have. It's actually getting the data from the purchase order list, and then is grouping it up, and then creating a brand new data source while actually summing it up. And this looks complicated, but trust me, it's not really complicated. Once you start digging into it in the beginning, since I was not really an Excel person, these formulas, I thought it looked a little intimidating, but as I kept digging into it, these turn out to be really nice and simple and very self-explanatory. So pretty much what I'm doing is that I'm actually doing a product of the quantity and unit price of by the category, and then showing that within the pie chart over here. And this actually makes up my data source for this pie chart over here. And this is basically a gallery control over here. And again, the gallery control has got a data source as well that I need to specify. This can again be just a plain simple SharePoint list. And let me go ahead and open up the SharePoint list real fast that this Power App is really connecting to. Purchase orders. This is pretty much the simple SharePoint list that I'm connecting to. And this is the entry that I've just done. Glad famous honky tonky burger. But instead of actually using the purchase order list, which is the data source, I'm actually customizing that. I'm actually grouping it up. And then again, just like how I did it over here for the pie chart, I'm doing the same thing for gallery as well over here. So kind of like massaging the data source by using Excel style formulas, and then formatting it if need be. So over here, I'm actually formatting it to actually have a $sign over here. So this basically gives me, so right over here, I have this Excel inspired formula over here, which actually shows me how I can go ahead and write down an Excel style formula to actually do any kind of formatting, prefix a $sign. That's pretty much what I'm doing over here. And again, how I've done all of this is actually part of the video. And some basic functions that you're gonna keep using over and over again is when you click on this icon over here, just refreshes all the data. Click on this over here, and then you can see that it's got these basic functions like refresh. This over here, it updates the context, and it actually provides, you can actually set the ascending or the descending order. This image over here that I see, I actually wrote down a formula over here to navigate to a different screen, which is a browse screen, which is this one over here. And finally, if you go to any of these screens, like the details screen, actually, I'm going to go to the edit screen. And clicking on this icon over here, basically saves the data to the SharePoint list. And this is the formula which is actually used behind the scenes submit form. So this is a pretty, pretty decent app, which actually makes use of SharePoint list. And it actually goes ahead and massages the data, how the user wants it, presented in a pie chart, presented in the manner that they actually want it. And this runs, on any mobile device. Now, let's go over to, hold on a second. Now I'm gonna go ahead and show what I have done to customize my SharePoint list form. And I have a form over here, which is inventory. And right from PowerApps over here, again, I have these two different options, create an app and customize forms. And I have actually customized this form over here, and I'll show you how I've done that. It looks like a very basic customization, but you're gonna see that I can actually, so there's color behind the scenes, and there's this top banner up in the top image up in the top. And it basically just has these three columns over here, stock, category, and quantity. Okay. And I can go ahead and enter an iPhone 8 as a new stock. And this is going to be electronics. And quantity is going to be 100. Click on save. Which is nice and easy, awesome. So I have this iPhone 8 app. What I want to show you now is role-based security. Even though I was able to create an entry within the inventory table for iPhone 8, but I just want to make sure that I'm the only person who can actually do this. If there are other users who are logged in, they shouldn't be able to do that. And I'll show you the example to start with. If I'm actually trying to edit laptops right now, click on edit, and I cannot modify the stock. I can only create new entries, but I cannot modify the stock column. This is disabled for me. This is read only for me. The same applies for anything. The same applies for iPhone 8 as well. So hey, once the stock is created, hey, nobody messes with the name. It's iPhone 8. You can modify the category, you can modify the quantity, but not the stock. But I can have another user who's Donna Carden, and she can actually log into the same list. And try opening up any entries over here for editing. Takes a little second over there. Still loading up. But hey, you know what? Donna can actually modify the stock. She is actually a manager. She's got permissions, and she can actually go ahead and modify the value for the stock as well. So this is a pretty big thing. This is role-based security, and I can actually go ahead and implement the entire farm based on role-based security, so that hey, managers can do a certain thing, whereas users cannot do a certain thing. And the way this is, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this for a couple of minutes over here, because this is something that a lot of people have actually been looking for. I'm going to go back a little bit, and then I think I lost my thread of. Okay. Yeah, role-based security over here. So, so the way this has been done is we are using Office 365 groups for deployment. So what I have done is that I've actually created, and I can show you that right here. I have created a couple of different test Office 365 groups over here. Test manager team and test user team. Only those people who are part of the test manager team can modify the stock column. So these are the managers who can actually go ahead and customize, who can go ahead and save certain values. In my case, it just happens to be one single column, but all of us know that, you know, the entire view can actually be role-based. If a user is a manager, then they should be able to see a whole different set of buttons. Clicking on those buttons, that is a whole different set of things. But then if it's a user, regular user, they wouldn't even see any of those options. So over here, the role-based that I've implemented is using Office 365 groups, which is pretty much where the whole market is heading, and Microsoft is recommending to leverage Office 365 groups as much as possible. There's a whole different process for actually doing this. It's really not as simple as just creating groups and adding users to it, but there's a whole different set of process to it. I'm going to go ahead and I haven't had a chance to blog it out, but I'll go ahead and create a blog out of that. This basically requires registering certain APIs. This basically requires creating these groups and then accessing these groups. So if I go back to the inventory list and then try customizing it over here, I just want to show you this real fast. I know we're running out of time here. Click on and customize forms over here. Now this is going to open up the SharePoint list form, in PowerApps Studio right in the web itself. So again, you don't even need to download PowerApps Studio. Give a little second. And there it is. So pretty much what I'm doing over here is that I'm actually invoking Graph API. So using Azure Active Directory. So I have to go ahead and do some registrations, do some certain steps. within Azure Active Directory and request permissions to use the right Graph API. Then once I have actually done that, then I can actually, the Graph API basically returns me back a whole set of groups that I'm part of. And what I can do over here is that I can actually go ahead and, depending on the rules specified over here, I can actually go ahead and customize these rules to make this visible or invisible. And even though it's kind of like a little complicated process, the main challenge over here is not to write down the formula, but the main challenge over here is to go ahead and configure Graph API to be actually used. There's a plain simple there's a little complicated process involved over here, which actually makes use of the Graph API. But the good thing is that the Graph API is capable of returning back all of the Office 365 groups that this user belongs to. When all these groups are basically returned, then the farm is able to iterate through all the groups and then check if this user is part of a certain group. If this user is part of a certain group, then only then I go ahead and make this control visible. Other than that, if the user is not part of the group, then this control will be disabled for the user. Click on back to, I'm just going to keep this window open if you have to come back, and just click on back to SharePoint here, which takes me back to the inventory. So this was a quick demo on the role-based form using Office 365 groups. And I think that we covered this as well, the budget management app walkthrough. So again, some of the common data sources that the Power App can connect with is SharePoint Online, the CDM, SQL Server databases, Salesforce, Dynamics 365, and Excel workbook. Sharing is not public facing. It can be shared and accessed across the organization. It can be shared with all or specific users. Connections and gateways. There's this whole big concept of connections and gateways. And there's this whole big concept of connections and gateways. And you're going to see, and so connections work with services and data, lots of connection types available. And gateways allows access to on-prem data. A little bit about these formulas. We can use these formulas to perform calculations, and Microsoft has got in-depth documentation on these formulas. Change appearance, conditional formatting, navigation, validation, saving and updating data, and it can also do more than one action. Controls and properties, very InfoPath-like feel when dragging and dropping controls on a screen. Advanced view, more dev-like view of the properties. Will the formula hold up to the business rules like they did in InfoPath? It almost seems like, like they would. A little bit about these new rules. So rules rolled out a couple months back, and in Power Apps before that, I don't think that they were rules. And I can go ahead and define these rules. And as everybody knows, rules actually comes with conditions and actions. And I can go ahead and define the condition over here, and then I can go ahead and define a certain action over here as well. And this action basically, I can write down formulas for that, but also it lets me kind of like walk through the formulas. It kind of like lets me walk through the actions. It lets me select what I want to do, and then it kind of like creates the formula behind the scenes by itself. Where to save the Power App code? I can save it on the cloud, or I can save it as an MS app locally on my computer as well. Power Apps versus InfoPath forms. Form layout like InfoPath. Form layout is now like InfoPath forms, and I have shown that. I can also go ahead and change the form that we have just seen, the role-based security form that we have just seen, I can go ahead and change that to landscape versus portrait as well. I can go ahead and change the format to large versus small as well. MS Flow in Power Apps. Usually I talk about Power Apps and MS Flow, but because this is a pretty small session, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about MS Flow in one single slide over here. There's awesome integration between Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. I can use the Power App controls to interact with or trigger a Microsoft Flow. So connections and gateways can be shared between solutions as well. So it pretty much means that, hey, I can go ahead and create anything within Power Apps, which is being saved to a SharePoint list or to a SharePoint calendar. And then I can go ahead and create that calendar invite in my Google Calendar as well, or a task in Wunderlist as well. I usually do this demo in my Microsoft Flow session, which is going to be followed, might be next month or the month after that. So pricing, let's go ahead and talk about Power Apps pricing. Primarily, it's as simple as this. Power Apps for Office 365 and Dynamics 365, it's included in selected Office 365 and Dynamics 365 plans. And for business users, if they just want to go ahead and buy just the Power App plan itself, is $7 a piece per month. For app makers and admins, it's $40 per user per month, which is actually the Power App plan too. And some of the key features of these plans are, for create, run, and share apps is unlimited. Anybody can do that. Use the common data services. Power App Plan 1 users can do it. Model your data using common data source. So anything other than that, for the most part, if the users want to go ahead and create enterprise level apps and then go ahead and administer them, then it's basically the plan 2. And as long as those apps, if you actually have Office 365 subscription, which actually supports Power Apps, they're going to be working as long as the Power Apps is being used with those SKUs. Like, for example, if they're being used by SharePoint itself, just by SharePoint, then if you have bought any kind of plan for SharePoint, you can always use Power Apps as long as you want to connect to SharePoint. If your Power App is trying to connect to a different service, then you got to move over to a more dedicated Power App plans, maybe Power App 1, Power App 2. Flows run once a month. So this is actually the number of runs of a flow, 2,000 flows. For Power Apps Plan 1, 4,500. For Power Apps Plan 2 is 15,000. So there's a lot more to it, and here are some of the details. So here are some important links on Power Apps, and sign up for the preview, documentation, tutorials, and reference content, Power App community, and pricing links over here. Some more important links about Microsoft Business Platform, Power Users, Power Apps, Flows, and Power BI. Social links for Twitter and Power Apps blog. Power Apps blog is by far one of the most powerful sources of information on Power Apps. Questions? We got a few more minutes. So does anybody have any questions? There's a way you can actually ask questions. You can actually type those questions and I would be able to see them. So if you type any questions, I can actually see them over here. Yes, I can do that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and send, the question is, can you display your blog for reference? Yes, I'm going to go ahead and actually send this slide over. It also has a link to my blog. So you can actually see that. I have one video on my blog right now for Power Apps, which actually talks about how I created the purchase order app. I'm going to go ahead and blog out details about how I created the role-based security. I just haven't had time for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and send a link to everybody who's part of this webinar. You're welcome. Power Apps, is there an example of using Power Apps with tool list, master detail? Yes, seems like there is. Actually, I was just watching a few days back, Laura Rogers, one of the blogs that she's got, she actually takes you through how you can create parent-child relationships with multiple different views. But if you're looking for some way to actually go ahead and invoke Power Apps data from two different views at the same time and show it to you, I know that there is something out there. There's a blog or something out there. I just can't remember the link, but I can show you a little piece of code real fast. So you need to stimulate a join operation on the two tables. This can be done in multiple ways. For example, so here's the thing, join with duplicate names. So this is your gallery control. So gallery is basically where you are seeing a list of all those items. So pretty much what I'm doing is that I'm creating like a join right here. So I pretty much join two different tables or two different lists, and then it can actually aggregate the data together and show it to me in one single list. There is, I haven't seen any, I really haven't seen any blog which actually talks about a lot of this. I haven't even seen a lot of blogs which talks about role-based security. But I think that there should be something out there pretty soon. As far as joining these two different lists and making that as a single data source, I'll try adding the source. I haven't tried this out myself, but when I get a chance, I'll go ahead and blog it out as well. Okay, question is, can you create several different data sources like SharePoint as well as SQL Server and one app screen and show it in one app screen? Yes, I think, yes, I haven't done that myself, but yes, there should nothing be stopping you from doing that, because now you can actually go ahead and create several different data sources within a Power App. And one data source can actually be connecting to Excel, second data source can actually be connecting to SharePoint, the third data source can actually be creating to Microsoft Dynamics CRM or Salesforce, and then you can actually go ahead and work out all those things together on one single screen. And this is really what I was referring to when I said data mashup. You actually create a data mashup from all these different services, and expose them in one single screen. All right, guys. So I think that we're almost up over here, and so I see one last question, which is, can you do reporting? Reporting kind of like InfoPath way, yes, I think I might be able to do it. But if you're looking for more robust reporting, then I think that Power BI might be the way to go. But back in the days, yes, like InfoPath was used for some reporting as well, like pulling the data and then showing it. You can't really do much of that, and you couldn't even do much of that in InfoPath. But you could definitely do all those things that you did in InfoPath over here. But printing from Power Apps is still a problem unless there's something out there that I don't know. You cannot print from the Power App that's running on your mobile device. And finally, if you have any more questions, please let me know. I would be more than willing to go ahead and help you out with anything that I can. Thank you so much again. Thanks for attending this webinar. And please let us know if there's anything that we can help you out on the Office 365 or the SharePoint platform.